Hi, Caroline Kearney here at Powell Arts, and I am standing with the terrific, wonderful Brian Hallas with his 3 pieces, which will be in the It Is Written show from now through October 29th, with a special preview during the Collingswood Fine Arts and Crafts Festival on August 19th and 20th. Brian, could you introduce us to your piece?
I'd be happy to.
Sis?
I have to refer to some notes for a moment.
Please do.
The title is in Italian, and my brain right at the moment is not. So I'm just going to read it.
You
so
feel
don't get it wrong.
You feel in Italian, but we speak in English.
There we. Yes. Prova questo sul tuo pianoforte, which means try this on your piano. And then each one has a title, a subtitle, as it were. This one is called Sustain.
Mm-hmm.
This one is In Time. And this one is called Take My Love, a Message. And each one is titled by virtue of those words, or in musical case, sometimes the
direction,
abbreviation.
Yeah.
So they come from those musical terms or the titles or words in the printing of, in the sheet music.
Well, and which is great because we say about the show that we want it to be all the ways that we use language and the way that we tell stories.
Right.
And one of the ways that we don't always think of as language is music. And you are, of course, a musician and a sound designer and an artist. And your mother was a singer.
My mother was a singer.
And so I really find this a fascinating way of putting together a narrative that uses art is a form of language, music is a form of language.
Right.
This kind of encompasses all of those.
Yeah, great.
So can you talk about how you fashioned
Sure.
this?
Well, part of it is it's something I wanted to do for a while. My mother being a singer, she was a soprano. And so in my house,
She must have been awesome. Singers are the best.
Also a diva. But anyway, she had music lying around all the time, you know. And so the visual of a sheet of music is very ingrained in my genetics, maybe. And at some point along the way, I thought, maybe some of these pictures I take would be interesting to be printed on sheet music. And let's just see what happens. And by you having this show, it actually prompted me to go and do the project.
Well, we love that.
So that's pretty cool too. I do too. It is sort of an homage to my mother in a sense. And I do in some ways wonder what she might think of them. But I think she'd really like them in a way. She was a classical singer who really also loved modern American music, especially.
Yeah.
So in her concerts, she would have
a little bit of everything.
Samuel Barber or whatever, you know, all sorts of people who vocalize and, she probably would kind of appreciate the sort of...
It's a happy circumstance.
It is happy circumstance.
You always say that about everything. Everything Brian is always like, this is a happy circumstance.
Yes,
but
as is my being here.
It's so instinctual for you, but I
really, sorry.
No worries. You always have to check and make sure parking here is a devil. They hired a meter maid.
This is a public service announcement.
That's right. I know it's a happy accident, but do you think on some level you were how did you choose to pair them?
I didn't. We worked. They are printed in an office copy machine, color copier, and so basically it was like, okay, here's the next sheet of paper. Yes, that's the next. Let's do the next.
That's so interesting.
And it really was not that kind of thing.
So, was Jen your lovely assistant?
Jen was my lovely
Someday,
assistant.
Jen, ma'am. Someday she's gonna do an artist talk too. That's so funny that it can't be random, but like something in your brain knew to associate one to the other.
I guess, yeah.
So how did you work through, because your work that we've shown previously, one is fairly large, except for your Cloud series, it's fairly large. And also even in your more muted tones, like your the one of the flower and the bee,
You're right. Giornaggio
Davanguardia.
Thank you. Which means avant-gardening.
Which is so funny. Even with that, it has very strong colors in terms of like you're using yellows and greens and pinks. Your other series where you have a series of flowers that almost look like stained glass, ones that you've made that are a shelf that end up looking like landscapes, and they all have, most of them, have very strong palettes. These are more subtle and also smaller.
And they're smaller because of the dictates of the printer.
Yes. But also, this is exactly how the size of music.
Much, I had to cut them down just slightly.
Yeah.
And what was your other point?
How do you feel about working small? What was that transition like for you?
I don't mind that at all.
Did you previously work smaller, or you always worked bigger?
No. I've previously worked smaller.
I've only known you as you worked huge.
I've had somebody tell me larger.
Okay.
So then I moved into larger, and then that's still running, but.
So they're beautiful. So let's keep those going too.
Right.
But these are, I think what's funny is they're still content dense, but they're just.
And they are
concise.
Yes, great. And I think that partly comes from the fact that maybe the conscious choice of photographs.
Yeah.
In the sense that I had a sense what might print well on music paper.
Yeah.
And some of them are very dense.
Yeah.
Which I don't like quite as much because I like the air, the space.
I like it's nice. And I also think it's funny because when we think of songs, most people, when they're consuming music, they're consuming short form.
Very true.
And
that's very true.
These are concise in a way that a lot of songs are, unless you're talking about like operas and masses and things like that. And so I think it's the perfect kind of like pairing kismet.
Thank you. Yeah, pairing kismet indeed. Yeah.
So I love this work.
Thank you.
I always think what you do and the way we always talk so much about what you're doing with the layering in terms of like editing and altering and the way that you take this image that you've broken up and layer on top. And what's interesting about this is you're still doing layering, but you're layering your work over these pieces of like personal meaning that has nostalgia for you.
Right.
That tells a story about your life and also about what you see in the world. I think that's really beautiful.
Oh, thank you so much.
So we hope you'll come see Brian's pieces at our It Is Written show from now through October 29th.
You'll love it.
Yeah, I think it's
not
gonna be
just
great.
mine.
So I think it's gonna be a great show.
Thanks, I do too.